So what I would do if you said, all right, Eric, I need to fix my breathing pattern, I would put you first in two poses, a supine decompression on your back and a prone decompression on your stomach. The position immediately dictates the breath and how it goes into your system.
I feel personally very broken. Like my range of movement is shocking. I can't really lift my arms very high. I've had physios and chiropractors and people that have cracked my neck and everything. So do you think that I'm broken? Do you think there's a way that I can be fixed? A lot of other people I know are very tight as well. I know you've just met me, but I would love for you to just share with us a little bit first, if you could, about what you do, and maybe we can get into some of the ways that you can help people like me open up a little.
Well, I would certainly do my best to help that cause. You know, you never want to hear somebody say, I'm broken or I feel broken. Those are rough places. Very often when somebody comes to me with an injury, I'll say, wait, let's see if you're really injured, because most of the time it's a chronic pain. It's a chronic symptom. Let's see if you're really injured, or if you're just twisted, if your fascia, if your muscle connections, if your posture and breath patterns and strengths have gone awry and they've sort of adapted quite a bit to modern things that we do, modern postures, modern practices. So my first response would be you're very likely not just fixable, but fixable to where you used to be, and then improvable from that point with some good direction and some good discipline. What I teach is foundation training. I've been teaching it since 2008. It's a big part of my life. It's kind of my life's work, if I could use that statement. And it's a really simple posterior chain, back of the body muscular integration program that has two very important principles, or sort of building blocks, that come together to make every single pose. And it's with those building blocks, anchoring of the pelvis and decompression of the torso, that we would take somebody with a statement like you just made, help them understand how movement and integrated muscle chains come together to work, to support the structure, to improve ranges of motion, to improve strength, and what's called eccentric motion. Very often the limiting factor is a muscle's ability to extend comfortably, and it kind of stays in a protective, tight, shortened pattern. One of the things that we're able to quickly do in foundation training is teach muscles across the whole body to sort of share the load of the weight of the body in different movement patterns. And that shared load yields almost immediate improvements in range of motion. So what I would like to discuss initially with you is actually anchoring the pelvis before we get into breathing, even though I know the podcast is about breath. You can't have a very functional rib cage or the things inside of it to their maximal kind of optimal function without a good anchor, a good pelvic stability and foot stability line that those things can sort of lift and tension away from. One of the big things about us standing upright over all these evolutionary years, however you believe it, is that we've had to make accommodations for different things, like breathing, like heart rate, like vascular, venous return, and different things like that. And when we collapse in on our postures, those things, those accommodations and adaptations we've made for millennia, they sort of get pressed on. And that pressing, that compression feels like exactly what you just mentioned. That's why I bring it up.
Because I never think about hips and I never think about pelvis. Generally it's bench press, it's press ups. It's the standard things that you see most people do in the gym. And I've been there back and forth, but I think you said something in one of your podcasts or one of your YouTube videos around people putting weights on top of a bad foundation or something along those lines. And when you said that, it really rang true with me. It's like, because I've never taken the time to fix some of these range of movement issues, it feels like everything I've been doing on top's been either hurting me or just not helping me progress. Would that be fair, do you think, something like that?
I think that's very accurate. I feel like that actually feels pretty much like what that statement is, which is, when I say foundation, I literally mean from the feet, through the legs, to the hips. where all of those big muscles connect to the pelvic bones, the pelvic structure. That's your core. That's your foundation. If that area isn't able to easily move the torso and support the weight of the torso in every direction, I'm going to angle my camera down just a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about through movement. So if my hips don't move well, I'm going to clench my butt muscles a lot. And I'm going to have to always move my spine to get something or to lift something or to move something. I'm always bending my spine. If I can get my hips to move well, I'm relaxing my glutes, allowing them to move, and my hips are sort of guiding every motion that my torso is doing through very powerful but also fluid ranges of motion. So a good foundation is the ability of the hips to very quickly govern the absorption of the torso's mass and weight, no matter the direction that the body is trying to move. The hip joints and pelvis have to be the underside of that glacier, okay? And what you see above the torso is sort of the top lighter part that is moved by the base. So we have anchoring exercises that actually relatively rapidly stabilize that region.
Hey everyone, just a quick one. If you could take 2 seconds to rate this podcast. If you're on YouTube, you give it a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe, and a share. If you're on the other beautiful platforms like Spotify and iTunes, if you could leave us a review, it takes a couple of swipes of the thumb, leave a little thing, share it with a friend, think about how you found this podcast, think about something that might benefit from the power of breath work. Please share this because it helps the community grow. The more it grows, the more we get the wonderful guests. Okay, back to the podcast.
And why is this a problem for us? Because I've heard, sitting is the new smoking, but it feels like we are de-evolving, and the same can be said with the breath, which we'll get onto later. But like, from your opinion, why is this a problem for modern humans? What's going wrong?
My kind of one-word answer is convergence. Everything in front of us used to be further away from our face than it currently is. Before cell phones and computers, and before that it was televisions, and they're all fine. Those are perfectly manageable, perfectly okay things, unless we don't make corrections for what we adapt into with them. The closer things get to our face, especially if our hand is involved holding one of them or typing in front of one of them, all of a sudden we're just like lazily, relaxedly falling towards it, trying to see it a little closer, moving towards the camera with our face a little bit. And what that does is it changes the leverage of the body. Now, a very strong pelvis has no problem with this. It literally cantilevers and moves underneath. The pelvis has the ability and flexibility to rotate with the torso, and you're supported. Most people, and when I say most, I mean 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, instead, your feet and hips move apart, and they sort of make room for the lowering torso. And your hips get out of the way as the pelvis falls underneath you. And that's actually not a contraction of the glutes, but it is a passive shortening of the glute muscles, the external rotators of the hips and pelvis, or at least some of them. That shortening is an adaptation, okay? Adaptive shortening is a theme or a theory in chronic pain. Adaptive shortening is under the compressive load of the body, certain muscles and joints will shorten and learn to live in very shortened positions. The big famous culprits are the pec minor, that pulls the shoulder blade up and over the shoulders, staying short. And the other culprit is those glute max, glute minimus, as the hip joints, as the hips turn out and make room, that space, the glutes, shortens.
Yeah.
And it stays short. And it's not short because it's pulling so hard. It's short because it's actually crunched down upon. And those two adaptive shortenings need to be remedied. So you ask, why do we feel this way? Why is this happening? Why are we getting worse? Why are we evolving? We're not. We're being lazy. We're just not making the corrections we need to. We are a wonderfully evolved species. We go to the moon and stuff. We have the capacity to do amazing things, and our physical bodies have the capacity to both get a little worse and get a little better. So we just have to make the switch. We're not de-evolving. Okay. That's not a generational thing. We don't evolve or de-evolve within that short of a period of time. But we are going to get better at doing less if multiple generations do less and feel less and feel worse. Like, if it's going to get harder and harder for us to be a strong species and a moving, powerful species, if less and less and less of the future generations have to do so.
Yeah.
Because that is how it comes.
Yes, and I personally worry, and I know a lot of my clients have the same concern. What we have, we pass on to our children, like we become poor role models. And so you've just described me, by the way. So I have the tight shoulders. And this is how I pick stuff up these days. I come down like this, and I've noticed that my son has started to do that, and so it's really hard for me to squat. And so I do worry a lot about being a poor role model to my children, and so that is another, not de-evolution, but this idea of passing on these poor techniques. So you wouldn't start with the breath, then you would start with the hips. Have I got that right, or something else?
Yes, absolutely. And in most cases, I would start with the hips. There's occasional differences. Some people have extremely expansive hypertrophic diaphragms, singers, certain instrument players, different things like that. But most people have a very tight, restricted diaphragm that hasn't quite learned how to be pulled upon in quite some time. So the first thing we need to do is establish anchors before we establish elastic pull and potential, which comes next very rapidly within a matter of a week or two. You have to first get the sensation of a base at the pelvis. We have anchoring exercises that do that. Anchored extensions, anchored hinges, and all these different anchoring processes that are put into different poses to stabilize what's called the pubic symphysis, where the two halves of the pelvic hemispheres meet. And then from those two halves, you have these big, strong thigh muscles, the adductor muscles, the groin muscles, that are like guide wires that insert at either side of that center of gravity, the pubic symphysis, between those two pelvic bones. Yeah. Those are the center of gravity guide wires of the body. When they're moving well, you're in a pretty good position. When the glutes shorten, they turn those quite a bit. And that turn stops that center line from being stable in its pull. It's off kilter. It's always trying to find center, but it's having a trouble time getting there. So we need to center those guide wires. And we do that with a lot of isometric exercises and very specific hip hinge pattern and lift pattern exercises for the pelvis. It's all body weight.
It's fascinating. So if somebody came to you and they said, look, I've got some dysfunctional breathing, I'm a mouth breather, or I've got a very tight chest, or I feel anxious, your first cause wouldn't necessarily go to the breath. You'd be looking at the body, which I don't think anyone's ever spoke to me that much about. So I find this fascinating because we go straight to breathing exercises where I come from. So,
Sure. A lot do. And breathing controls a ton. Breathing is very powerful. It controls a ton, but the frame that you breathe in can also very significantly dictate the breath you breathe. So I work with the scaffolding around the lungs. I work with the rib cage, the serratus musculature, the intercostals, the diaphragm, the latissimus muscles, the sternocleidomastoid muscles. These are pulleys that pull apart the rib cage. But those pulleys need an anchor line from which to pull. If the rib cage is unstable, those muscles dominate and they become problematic, and we become shallow breathers because they don't have anything stabilizing at the pelvis. So we need the two ends of that finger trap, the lift and the anchor at the bottom. So what I would do if you said, all right, Eric, I need to fix my breathing pattern, I would put you first in two poses, a supine decompression on your back and a prone decompression on your stomach. They're very similar poses done within two gravitational positions, one lifting the skull and learning how to breathe, one pressing and expanding the rib cage, zipping up the pelvis in both, learning how to breathe. So the position immediately dictates the breath and how it goes into your system. Once I put you, I'm going to stand up doing the position, but imagine I'm laying on my back. My toes are touching. My knees are touching. I'm standing tall. My hips are behind me a little bit. I'm not pushing them forward. I'm standing up, lifting my skull and just holding my lats as wide and broad as I can and my chest as high as I can while my knees are touching with my heels apart. That anchors the pelvis immediately. That position, you'll feel, you'll shake, you'll be into this very tight centering exercise immediately. That changes how your rib cage expands the moment the tension is held. So it's not like, okay, teach me how to do this, teach me how to breathe. It's anchor the pelvis, and first and foremost, take 20 breaths with that pelvic line anchored and feel where your rib cage is expanding. Breathe into those areas. That's what your rib cage wants to do when the pelvis is not centered and anchored. It wants to breathe here, but it can't quite get there. So that's kind of the first lesson.
Wow. And in layman's terms, what's going on with the pelvis and the rib cage? Like, are they misaligned and that's causing the problem? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a tug of war. They're meant to be in concert in a collaborative tug of war. The pelvis sort of pulls away from the rib cage. The rib cage, like a hot air balloon, sort of pulls away gently from the pelvis. But the most important thing is it's not a lift. It's an expansion, with the most important recipient of the expansion being posterior, the back of the rib cage. So the tether is the pelvis. The hot air balloon is filling with the breath, but we don't want it to lift off the ground, so that tether is tight. The pelvis is holding while the balloon tries to lift, and that attempted lift tensions everything in between.
Wow.
Does that help you understand?
I really like the hot air balloon analogy. That's helped my brain. Where does fascia kick into all this? How does that play a role in all these movements and breathing?
So the grand theory of fascia, as I understand it, is that tensegrity is the goal. Tensegrity is an outward expansive force instead of an inward compressive force. The idea being that an outward expanse strengthens seams more than an inward compression against those seams. Pulling creates better cohesion. Does that make sense? So in the torso, we have an expansive system that is learning to stay compressed. Right. So what we teach in foundation training, decompression breathing, is a re-education towards expansion for the whole axial skeleton. And that expansion teaches the rest of the body how to align. Without the expansion, it's almost impossible to find reasonable alignment.
So can you break that decompression breathing down a little bit more for us and explain like where that came from?
Yes.
And how we do it? Yeah.
Yes. So my foundation training comes from my personal injuries, 16 years of personal experience, and then sharing it with numerous patients, kind of developing a root system in 2007, 8, 9, 10, and then establishing a much more thorough system between 2010 and now here in 2024, just getting better at the same hip hinge, posterior chain integration, and then what I'm about to show you, decompression breathing. I had to fix my lower back initially. And in doing that, I did a lot of extension strengthening work, but my thoracic spine eventually became too extended, meaning I was thrusting my chest forward like this. Decompression breathing is a teacher that shows you where your rib cage is in space and teaches you to fill it first at the shield of the sternum, but this is a wall. You're not trying to lift this wall. You're trying to use this wall to lift the back of the ribs and fill the posterior edges of the low rib cage. Decompression breathing is for the back edges of the rib cage to lift with the front of the sternum. So the rib cage, front of the rib cage, sternum, back of the rib cage, just above the kidneys. Take a deep breath. The edges are getting denser away from each other. It's a density front to back, side to side inhalation through the nose. Try a couple with me. The most important position of this, though, is at the skull. So you're going to position your occiput, the pointy bone, right at the base of your skull, up and back as far as you comfortably can, up being the main direction. And you'll feel it naturally lifts your chest a little bit. Once you're there, breathe in through the nose. You'll feel the SCM front neck muscles help to lift the sternum. And then I want you to do your best to fill the breath behind you, like right between your lower shoulder blades. And this is the first half of decompression breathing. So we're just going to work on the inhalation for the first couple. Exhale however you need to, okay? And we're just going to position that inhalation, powerful, pulling from the back of the skull. And then I'm going to anchor your pelvis just a little bit by push your big toes together. Let them go a little further so your heels are just in front of your kneecaps.
This, Eric, or
No, okay. No, you can sit, because most people are going to be sitting watching this. They can do it this way very easily. This is called a seated decompression. It's very easy. So the heel, yeah, you're perfect. The knees are touching, the toes are touching, but the heels are apart. Mm-hmm. There you go. It's going to feel like your hips are rotating inward a little. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now that's your base position to just hold together. You're going to take the arms in front of you. This is called a sphere of tension. It's just imagine you're holding a giant coconut. Perfect. Wrap your elbows to each other just a little bit underneath, and that will engage your lat muscles. And we're now going to breathe through the nose into the back and front of the ribs. And you'll feel the position helps it quite a bit.
Do I hold the breath when it's full as well?
Okay. Not yet, just natural breathing at first. Just try to elevate, think elevate as big as you can, especially the shoulder blades behind you. Very good. You feel the restriction of the lats trying to participate there. That's the key. Breathe into the lats.
So the lats are the back of the shoulders, the shoulder muscles at the back?
The lats are under here. They wrap the entire upper back to lower back of the body.
Okay.
They're like bat wings. Very good. So now I'm going to work on the exhale with you. Watch me for a moment. You're here. You're breathing in. See these muscles working? These are levering my chest up. I'm going to keep them active as I exhale.
Okay.
Exhaling from my belly. Inhaling to the ribs. Expanding, and then exhaling, maintaining the expansion to the best of your ability. And we're training the muscles of expansion eccentrically.
And is it a forceful inhale and a mouth exhale? Is that right? Yeah.
Exhale through either, whatever feels comfortable. And it's forceful, but really it's slow. The slower and more deliberately you inhale, the more expansion you can yield. Yeah. Perfecto. And you're just really learning the somatosensation of breathing. What muscles am I using? Where is the volume filling? Where am I exhaling from? And I don't mean nose or mouth, I mean muscles. And now I want you to stay in that position for one moment. Press your heels into the ground. Are they pretty much just under your knees there? It should feel like the glutes contract right away. Yeah. I want you to lift your arms in front of you as high as you can, like you're reaching to me in the camera, as far as you can. Press your heels into the ground and stand up through the glutes. And you've just done a very simple breathing and postural correction exercise together.
Cool.
Yeah.
Why are the toes pointed in and the knees? What's going on with that piece?
So the two malfunctions, I'll call them, or maladaptations of technology. I literally gave a TED talk on this in 2011 called the unexpected consequences of modern technology. And it was all about these two rotations I'm talking about right now. Shoulders dive in internal rotation. They become a weight on the neck and the traps, and they become the adaptive shorteners of the pec minor. The other rotation that we're correcting in that thing you just asked me is the hips. When you're sitting, they turn out. The glutes shorten, the head of the femur, the whole long femur bone rotates slightly externally, which closes off the SI joint. The nerves that come out of the SI joint, the nerves that come out of the lower spine, they have a much narrower area to come out of as a direct result of that external rotation of the pelvis being stuck that way and kind of sat upon. So the internal rotation, the toes together, the knees touching, internal rotation is in almost every single pose that we teach, except squatting pattern poses. And that internal rotation is to correct that chronic external rotation and adaptive shortening of the glutes, and to reposition the adductors, the central groin muscles where they connect at the pelvic bones, to recenter that more accurately.
That's fascinating. What's your thoughts on mental health conditions that we have today, in particular stress, anxiety, depression? Have you seen anything that when they're working through these patterns with you and they get the foundational basics, they start to alleviate some of that? Have you come across much of that?
Temporarily, you know, I personally suffer from those things. I think everybody does. And if you pay attention to the world, it's an anxious place to live right now. So with that in mind, you know, these are Band-Aids for that. I don't think that breathing techniques change the processing of trauma or anxiety. I don't even necessarily think that breathing techniques or physical techniques, mind you, can make that dramatic a change on serotonin level production without the building blocks of serotonin production. And most depressions and anxieties have a lot to do with those factors that are chronic, that can't get better. That's not me saying medicate them. That's me saying, like, you know, go more towards functional medicine, which sort of feeds the neurotransmitter peptides or proteins or amino acid breakdowns, whatever it is that builds up those neurotransmitters. Get more of those in your system. And then also do the breathing techniques, also do the postural work and the exercise, and do high intensity things. All these things help depression and help anxiety. All of them help it, but none of them cure it. You have to kind of keep doing them and understand that, like, it's a sort of a work to reward ratio. If you practice decompression breathing and some good exercise and maybe a mild meditation every day, you're probably not going to experience much depression and anxiety in comparison to if you didn't, if you're prone to that. We have a lot of people that say decompression breathing and the practice of foundation training makes them feel better, not just physically and pain management, but in mental overall well-being, mental health, stress, all that stuff. But I think that any exercise, any movement, any focused breathing would do that.
I think that's a really very well put and balanced conversation output you've given, because I think a lot of people say this is the cure, this is the one thing you've been missing, and life is not like that, is it? It's more complicated.
Yeah, as I get older, look, I have kids. I've run the business now for 16 years. I've actually taught this to a lot of people that have come from a lot of different backgrounds, across medical to mental health, to physical strain, to, I mean, we have agriculturalists, we have all sorts of people that have learned this work. And depending on the background and the life experience, they perceive it differently. They perceive stress differently. They perceive life differently. There's no way that anything can be a cure-all, in my opinion. It's just, you have to accessorize people's lives. Foundation training is a universal accessory to other movement and rehabilitation modalities, to other breathing modalities. But it is in no way, shape, or form a do-it-all, thorough, cure everything system.
What's some bad advice or misconceptions that you hear in your industry? Anything come to mind?
I don't know, man. Everybody's a little nuts in my industry, myself included. I mean, if you're in the movement world, or you're in the chiropractic world, or you're in like the bodywork world, you somehow think you can make a difference in people's lives. And I believe you can still. I'm extremely optimistic, and I've even seen a lot of people get better, but like, there's some ego involved in all of us. So I think the advice is, I won't hit that question. I'm not going to give, I don't think there's bad advice out there. I think anything you do as well as you can, and you should be pretty good. There's people out there with as much knowledge as me, more knowledge as me, of me than I have, teaching things very differently than I teach. Does that mean I'm wrong or they're wrong? No, of course not. The body does all sorts of things. You can breathe all sorts of ways. You want to find as many as you can that help you. But there is an absolute problem with brief social media expertise being misconceived for legitimate medical advice and legitimate health advice that will last a lifetime, or at least a decade, or at least 5 years, or at least a year, or at least a month, and not just be a waste of money, or not just be a waste of effort, or not just be some flashy person showing you how good they are and how cool they are, or how fit they are, or how special they are. There's a lot of look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me out there right now that is being passed off as health advice. So I guess the worst advice being put out there comes from an individual's experience that hasn't truly been tried and tested through numerous demographics, where they are taking their personal experience exclusively and saying it's the way. I've had a very personal experience with foundation training, but it's been now tested across countless thousands and thousands and thousands of bodies and types of bodies and demographics, and people that are more than twice my age and people that are less than half my age. And I really love that spectrum. That's what you're trying to hit. So it's not that there's individual pieces of bad advice that I think are problematic, except squeezing the shoulder blades together for stability. That's the only one. Don't squeeze your shoulder blades together for stability. That's an unstable position. Other than that, just people go to like medical school and they go to doctoral programs and they get master's degrees and they study a lifetime to understand what they're talking about. Just do your best to find those people, because they exist among the biohacking and movement community just as well as a lot of the influencers and other people, but they're not as flashy. They're just much more informed.
You've made I've never thought about it like that before, but yeah, you get somebody on social media saying I've done this and this is, this was the outcome. But I never really stopped to question, but who else have you tried that with and how many times? And yeah, I never thought about the demographics. Thank you. That's
we got a bunch of 30-year-old longevity experts, man.
You're right. Yeah.
And the truth is, the only longevity experts out there are pretty much in their 70s currently. They're there, and we should just be listening. Some of them smoked cigarettes their whole lives. We just don't know as much as we believe we know. And it's not real. The best advice is don't judge people so much. And the worst advice is take somebody's word for it if they're the only one that's done it.
That's really good. Where do you stand on mouth and nose breathing? Some people go down the whole route of like the mouth is the devil and we should be, nasal breathing 99% of the time. But some people I know in the functional world are saying, I don't really care about the nose, because actually if we get the mechanics sorted, it doesn't matter because you're going to breathe slowly and rhythmically. So what's your take on this little debate?
In an imperfect world, the easiest advice to improve somebody's health immediately is to start focusing on nasal breathing almost exclusively. That will calm down the nervous system and challenge carbon dioxide tolerance a little bit, and it will kind of improve metabolic efficiencies almost immediately. If they tape their mouth at night, there seems to be a genuine health improvement from that, from just nasal breathing at night. I don't know if there's a way to repair the structure of the mouth to some perfect ideal airway gap length and depth and all. I don't know what that is. I'm not a myofunctional therapist or specialist, but I do know they're doing a hell of a lot more tongue ties than they used to, where they're just snipping tongue ties on a regular now, using lasers, using all sorts of things. I don't know if it's I think the current generations are heavier, lower metabolic rate, a little fatter, a little less muscularly involved, and much worse posture than previous generations as a direct result of kind of what we're doing. And that will affect your airway more than anything else, including nasal versus mouth breathing. Okay, your phrenic nerve is right here off your fourth vertebra. If all of a sudden the back of your head is resting on top of it, that's really bad for your breathing airway. That's really bad for breathing patterns. Your vagus nerve, which really controls breathing rate, heart rate, just overall sense of panic or anxiety, is right up around here. And if, again, you're resting on it, it's giving it a very false perception. So I'm a root cause person. I always want to go to the root. And I really believe the root is that we are developmentally adapting to letting our head rest on the back of our neck, putting undue and unnecessary pressure on the phrenic nerve and on the vagus nerve and other accessory nerves that come off near them. And those nerves control the diaphragm. Those nerves control the inhalation and exhalation rate in the body. If we are constantly putting pressure on them, being lazy about it, breathing poorly, eating poorly, looking at screens, they can keep doing the tongue ties. They can keep playing with the airway as they want, but it's narrowing because of pressures external to it, not because of some all of a sudden weird human adaptation with narrower airways.
Eric, you're getting me a bit emotional here, so I wasn't going to go here, but let's talk about... So I have a really severe tongue tie, to the point where my tongue doesn't really come out my mouth. And my general... When I first met my girlfriend, we had a Tinder date many years ago, and her feedback to her friend was, nice guy, but really bad posture. That was the first thing she said to him. And so I've always kind of been in this position. And my theory, although I've not had this backed up by anybody, is because my tongue is so pulled forward, the whole fascia's doing this. And I've seen so many chiropractors and different people trying to open me up and different twists and moving different things. I know you're not myofunctional, but what are your thoughts on the tongue being pulled forward, and could that be causing some of this? Or am I trying to find a reason for this and actually I just need to fix it by doing some of the foundational stuff you're talking about?
It's a great question. So in person, I have typically no problem getting a little extra length from the tongue by doing 2 postural maneuvers. We can try it in real time right here. If you're comfortable making funny faces on camera, you can turn around if you want to do it. So turn profile for me, please. Okay. Sweet. So I want you to pay attention. I'm going to mimic you for a second, and I'm not making fun of you.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I want to be real, and I want to give this a proper go. Okay. So you are significant.
Yes.
Here. You're hanging on the shoulders pretty bad, but the worst issue is right here. Okay. So the shoulders are lifting to support your head. Can you see what I'm doing here? Your shoulders are hugging your neck from below, and then you're sort of just like sitting back on it. Can you feel that? Okay. So that has 2 levers that must change. But first, I want you to stick your tongue out, or whatever you would do, whatever feels like a limited position for you. Okay, cool. Okay, so now let's go right here. Watch me, and we're going to try it a couple times first. Under the chest are the serratus muscles. Okay, right here. I want you to tap right there. Take 5 or 6 breaths that lift, but don't push forward. They literally just lift, like you're trying to bucket handle them this way. Right. Yes, right there. So do that a couple times, and let me know if you feel a lift of the sternum, like the sternum's coming closer to your neck.
Yeah, this is coming up, yeah.
Great. So now, the next time you feel, you can relax the tapping a little bit, just kind of hold that muscle so you feel it. See how it keeps my elbows aren't behind me like this, they're kind of out and strong. There you go. That's your, now breathe in that position. You'll feel a bigger lift of the sternum.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty cool, huh? So let's do 2 or 3 of those. Now, what I'm looking for is this. If you lift your occiput exactly as you're doing, you're just going to tuck your chin down a little bit and push the back of your head up. And now take that same breath. Yep, you're doing it. Take that same breath. Getting a little bit of contraction here. Okay. I want you to imagine the back of your neck getting as long as possible. Feel how much more breath you just got on that one?
Yeah.
Now on the next inhalation, before you exhale, just stick your tongue out and let me just see what that feels like. Tell me what that feels like more than anything. Just kind of what you're doing is you're capturing that pull.
Yeah.
So watch what my hands are doing. Relax everything and just watch. This is your, right now, this is your nose. This is the back of your skull. Try to level those out to the best of your ability. So right now, you're kind of like, go turn profile for me again. Yeah, okay. So what I want you to do is lift the nose and then do your best to lift the skull to meet it.
So lift the nose and then lift the...
Yeah, exactly what you just did. Do 5 or yeah, right there. Keep doing those.
That's
Really lift at the skull.
Really good,
yeah. Lift as high as you can, and then that position right there, that's where I want you to try to stick your tongue out and kind of correlate that lift to pressing forward. And then lift the sternum to it with the breath in. So those are the initial postural changes that I would want to be making.
That is incredible because when I was doing that, I felt less stress and less tension just by... And I've noticed that if I'm around a door frame and I just lean over it like this, my stress and anxiety levels drop quite dramatically. And so when you've mentioned the nerves, I did think that maybe they're impinged or something. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there's something called vagal tone, where they will literally use vagal tone and vagal exercises to help really calm down or even bring people back to an excited state in pretty emergency situations. The vagus nerve is the real deal. It's cranial nerve 10. It is as infiltrated into the brain and body as it gets. And that cranial nerve goes right through the sternocleidomastoid. So if you're compressing on that, there is a consequence of some degree to it. Usually that consequence is a heightened sense. When a river is flowing and you have all this water moving, it's moving the same volume of water, and then the river narrows, but still has, and all that water starts moving quickly. Same volume approximately, but moving much more rapidly. Nerve compression acts sort of like that. It's not that it diminishes nerve flow, it excites nerve messaging and mixes it up. So think of the sensation of anxiety and then think of what I just said.
Yeah.
When you lift off, try to give a little space to the river. Think of it that way. And hold that. Let this fatigue. And take 5 deep breaths, the best you possibly can. Feel your front neck muscles there. Using the front neck, the much stronger side of the neck, to lift the weight of the head as it's designed to be lifted.
So we're told sometimes in the breathwork world, we don't want to see anything here and anything here, because that's just,
how's that working for you?
Well, not good. No, not good. So that's okay then. So if I'm doing this and you're seeing some tension here while I'm doing it, or you're even seeing this rise or these rise, then in your opinion, that's okay. That's not a bad thing.
It's required in the modern era.
Okay.
It is absolutely required in the modern era because you can't meet tension with relaxation. You sort of change tension with an opposite tension. And you pull them until they collaborate and balance out a little better. So you can be like this all day, every day, breathing as calm as you want, making 0 topographical structural change. Or you can make the changes and then allow breathing to adapt to those changes.
That's fascinating. So your opinion would be to actually put myself into this position and stay there till fatigue, and then just keep doing that a few times a day. And
I want you to think of the clavicles as having a front to back. Okay. Now, right now, your clavicles they should be approximately this angle. Right now, they're approximately like your front clavicles are just low. You know, you're hitting the front brake too hard. All right. So what I want you to do is breathe underneath those front clavicles, giving them buoyancy. Using that sternocleidomastoid lever to lift the clavicle, its primary insertion point.
This is so interesting.
It literally inserts at the sternum and the collarbone in order to lift those. And the pulley that it lifts from is the occiput pulling away as far behind you as it can. But it doesn't pull like this. It pulls like this.
Okay. From this point around, yeah.
Yes, like right at the point. Feel the occiput bone, the pointy bone at the back. Put your hand on it, give it a feel.
From the okay.
And then notice the lift. Like literally notice where that can lift from, because that's where the SCM muscles insert.
Wow. And you're not pulling shoulders back here. That's not what we're doing with this exercise.
No. You're pulling the shoulders, if anything, straight away from each other. The shoulder joints are just pulling wide.
That's right. And we're going to talk about your app, and we're going to talk about your coaches. So just last bit on me on this. Would this be something we would do in an app, the app situation, or would you say actually based on where you are, maybe it's best to seek out a coach, or would you suggest starting with the app first?
They're both very good. We've put significant effort into teaching every single foundation training instructor that's around the world. Some areas have a ton. Some areas have one within 500 miles. So it all depends. We have about 1,400 around the world. We've been certifying since 2012. Wherever you are, hopefully there's one there. I always want people to support the foundation training instructor community. So it's the best way to learn. We also have FT streaming, where we have dedicated programs that teach you fundamentals like this, that take you all the way to extremely athletic maneuvering like our professional and Olympic athletes do. So we have across the board educational abilities, and you can use them to your means. And we also have a YouTube channel. You can learn it completely for free. And a lot of people use that very successfully. I just want you to learn. I just want you to use foundation training and enjoy these. You especially, Michael, I want to see what this does for you. In fact, we have a 30-day program that we just launched where it's called Build Your Foundation in 30 days. I'm going to give you access to it after this if you're open to just going through it.
That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like perfect for you.
Because what you're saying is just resonating so strongly. And like I say, you're not the first person I've spoken to about this. I've interviewed people and I've done all these different movement exercises, and nothing. I've got to the point where it's like, I think I need the tongue surgery. That's the only way I'm going to get fixed. Maybe that's not. If you're open to a real experiment, if you believe you might need the tongue surgery, which you very well might. Sometimes people absolutely need to get that frenulum, or this right has to get just reduced a little bit so that you get the maneuvering wherever they do that cut. I might be wrong on how I just described that. I'm not a myofascial or myofunctional guy, but give it 60 days. Honestly, give it 30 days. If you're not noticing benefits in 30 days to both your breathing and also to some fascial restrictions, I'd be honestly a little surprised based on your posture and your breath pattern currently. Okay, I'm in.
If you have a good chiropractor or osteopath or physical therapist that's very good at manipulation, some upper cervical work might be beneficial. But in your body type, I think honestly, thoracolumbar work, kind of pitching the rib cage better for you, might be a little more appropriate. But just try the Build Your Foundation program. Okay. That's a very whole body approach to what you're trying to do.
So I'm already thinking in my head, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna film it, and we'll see where we end up. But I'm very helpful.
Yeah,
thank you.
I love it. And I'm happy to help. I'm really happy to go kind of nuanced with you along the way a bit and help you. It's a cool process to work very heavily. There's something on the app called the 1-minute neck remedy, which is for the platysma membrane. And that, I believe, would be very beneficial for you as well, is that platysma, this overarching membrane of the neck, giving a little bit more room to you as well. And the mylohyoid muscle under here.
You've got me very excited because I don't want to have a surgery. I'm 42 now, so if I can get away with it, I've been putting off my whole. Interestingly, my son had a tongue time. As a baby, it's just a snip and he's done. But as you get older, it's a bit more complicated.
Exactly.
So if I can avoid any surgery, that'd be ace. What are your thoughts on, I don't know if it's a craze, but people talking about sleeping on the floor, getting rid of their mattresses, and this is meant to fix back pain, and having a hard surface. Where do you stand on all the whole mattresses versus floors? Or is it too nuanced and it's individual?
I think a firm mattress is probably best. Just in general, the floor might be a little uncomfortable. I sleep better on a mattress than on the floor personally. That being said, you should be able to sleep on the floor too. So I'll put it as simple as this. The more true structural integrity you have, the less structural integrity outside of you is required. So the more structural oomph and correctability and resilience that your body has within it, which is very trainable, the less it matters whether you're on a firm or soft or floor or pad or in the right perfect shoe or orthotic. You know what I mean? Like the body has a tone that it can maintain pretty well with a little bit of practice. So the goal is more to lean towards working towards that tone than finding the perfect environment.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned the feet there a little bit. What thoughts on barefoot versus shoes? And I've got like Vivos, and I like to be barefoot quite a lot. But again, if you say, well, how's that working for you? It's not working very well for me right now. So what are your thoughts on being less in these very soft, fluffy shoes that people enjoy wearing?
It's probably best to have both. It's probably best to go barefoot a good amount of the time, probably 60, 70% of the time if you're able to. But then the other 30 to 40% of the time, you're wearing a cushioned shoe. You're letting the foot recover. You're living in the modern world. You know, you're letting yourself be a part of that. You're letting the foot recover. The more important part about being barefoot is dorsiflexion of the toes, dorsiflexion of the ankles, spread of the toes, spread of the foot. The arch is a very interesting membrane, the arch of the foot, and it doesn't contract. I mean, it shortens in the plantaris muscle like this, but it's best tensioned when the toes move away from it and the edges move away from it, like a trampoline is tensioned. So with the arch, you're actually looking for sort of a trampolining type experience as you're walking. And barefoot allows you typically to lift and reach with the toes, allowing that arch tension to be most accurately kind of initiated. Whereas shoes tend to keep your feet in flexion, and you're just walking a little bit with like this little flexion. The arches stay tight. It changes the mechanics up the leg quite a bit. So I would say the more you're walking and moving, be in the barefoot type shoes. When you're standing around, not moving much, that's when you actually want the cushion.
Okay. So the next thing, you're standing, I'm sitting. I did have a standing desk. I didn't use it, so I got rid of it. What percentage, you know, for office workers, which are a lot of people that watch this podcast, what percentage of their day should they be sitting versus standing? Should it be 100% standing, or is there a variation there?
It depends how active they are outside of the office. I think the happiest people I've met in the corporate world have extremely physical hobbies that they have to spend the week recovering from. and they sit and they recover and they'll go to the gym, they'll do some other stuff. But over the weekend, they'll hike for 20 hours, or they'll mountain bike a couple of days, or they'll surf for 2 or 3 very long sessions. And they really use the body for hours and hours and hours. And then they don't mind being a little less active during the week as a result. The problem is a lot of people just go to the gym and work out really hard in positions that are very similar to the seated position that they're working in. They ride bikes, they do bench presses, like you said, bicep curls. I mean, the amount of bicep curls that are done is kind of ridiculous. Your arms are for just gathering. They're supposed to kind of gather stuff. Bicep curls are good, but for like punching yourself in the face, maybe. Anyways. We want to use our bodies as best we can. So it's not like everybody needs to be standing at work all the time. Would I rather have people standing than sitting? Yeah, for the most part. But I think that you need to just have both. Honestly, I think the ideal work environment has the ability to have both, has areas to relax and then areas to focus. When you're working, you should be focusing, standing, working, interacting. When you're relaxing, have a seat, go chill. Do that for 20 minutes at a time throughout the day. Make them separate. I think that's where probably the benefit exists. I know personally for people that work for me, you can do whatever you want as long as you get your work done. I could care less. I just want you to feel well, and I want the work to reflect that. So I would probably be fired from any job in a normal place, but that's, go find people you can work with. I mean, I see people on standing desks. I see people on treadmill desks, on Bosu balls. I mean, everybody has a body that gets uncomfortable after sitting for too
Yes.
long.
Yeah. It's weird, right? I mean, how long have chairs been invented for? Not as long as humanity, right? We were on the floor, I guess, most of the time, or standing, or squatting.
It's just we should have more physical jobs, and if you don't have a physical job, you have to have very physical hobbies. It's just kind
I
of
like
that
that.
simple. You just need to balance it out somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you're sitting all day in your life. Go become a professional slackliner on the weekends. Just do something weird that challenges your body in a totally different
Yeah.
way.
I like that. I'm a big fan of. I'm very bad at it, but I do jiu-jitsu a few times a week, and
Nice.
that's. But I quickly realised like how my dysfunctional body's causing a problem with that. So I just recently started playing with kettlebells. What are your thoughts on those? Do you use those in your foundational training?
Yeah. I don't use it in foundation training, but we do have kettlebell programs that blend foundation training and kettlebells in strength programs that we offer, especially taught by Coach Jesse Salas, who's kind of our main program director, main instructor. He is exceptional with kettlebell work. He's certified in strong first, starting strength, and he's also, the main instructor that has taught all of our instructors with me in foundation training. So he's got very, very well versed in both of those. We have a called a baseline strength program that includes kettlebell work and foundation training, but the foundation training protocols are all body weight.
Okay.
Yeah, I love kettlebells though. Done well, they're an extraordinary tool. Probably the best posterior chain tool out there.
Where's your head on sauna and cold, and does that help with body movement in any way, or is it just something extra we shouldn't consider it? Because I always like to think about sauna as being, oh, this is helping me be more flexible, or it's warming my body up. But again, hasn't really worked out very well for me, but I do a lot of sauna. So is there any benefits, other than the normal thermogenesis stuff we hear about with sauna and cold, are there any benefits in terms of functional movement patterns?
I think that saunas loosen you up, and so do ice baths. I think that they allow your fascial system neurologically to relax a little bit, and they give you an ability to stretch quite a bit deeper and to move quite a bit deeper. Um, I use them personally. I've used them for countless years, and I love them, especially sauna. I don't really use infrared sauna. I only use traditional, and it's been a huge help in my life overall. Uh, I again, the thing I know is foundation training and biomechanics and kind of this patterned breathing and posterior chain integration and spinal alignment type situation. What I think is that saunas are good. What I think is that ice baths, but not frozen ice. I mean, actually, that's a stupid statement. Not so cold that it's predominantly ice where it's like 32 degrees. I like to be in about 45 to 55 degrees is my sweet spot. I lived in Santa Barbara for about 15 years when I was developing foundation training, and I used to go into the ocean there pretty much every day. And the ocean there is about 52 to 60 degrees throughout the year, Fahrenheit. And that temperature kept me in the best mood of anything. I notice from a mood enhancement, overall well-being standpoint, that's where I look at ice baths.
Yeah, I've been in, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but when I was in Poland, we were in 2 degrees Celsius, which was almost freezing and horrible. But when you came out, it was the happiest I ever felt. We just sat on the rocks. It was all snow everywhere. All the endorphins were really, it just felt beautiful.
Your body's like,
We
thank
didn't
God we
die.
didn't
Yeah,
die. We didn't die.
survived. You were just surfing before this podcast, right? So
Yes.
I had
Yes,
Laird
sir.
Hamilton on this podcast years ago, but I didn't ask him enough of the right questions. I'm gutted. What have you done, if anything, for your CO2 tolerance? Do you work on that in case you get pulled under?
No, that's what Laird Hamilton does. I don't surf
Okay.
like Laird Hamilton. I surf like Eric Goodman. Very different. I like to surf normal waves on playful boards with human beings that like to take waves with each other and give each other waves occasionally. I know Laird. I'm very impressed by Laird. But I don't surf like him. I surf like a normal surfer. Laird surfs gigantic waves that demand 2 to 3 minute hold downs, and the ability for his body to take that. That is so above my pay grade, Michael. That is not where I'm at. I am blown away by those guys. I work with a lot of those guys, Billy Kemper, Kahea Hart, guys that can just do amazing breath holds and tolerance capacities. That ain't me.
Okay.
I love to surf. I want to surf every day, but I stay within what I would consider a a safe and reasonable zone.
And moving out of your wheelhouse a little bit, because I know Laird's a big fan of Wim Hof. Have you practiced? Have you played
Yeah.
with any of the hyperventilation
Yeah.
exercises? And what are your thoughts on some of those?
Yeah. It's wonderful. I love it. I actually learned about Wim Hof first through Laird Hamilton and then through Jesse Salas. Those two guys kind of told me about it at the same time. And I loved it. I still love it. I love controlled hyperventilation, whoever's name you throw behind it, quite frankly. And it's been used for countless years prior to what Wim Hof did with it. But what Wim Hof was able to do, which is so interesting, is use himself as this insanely able, high capacity self-experiment with an amazing just getting through it story and really, really cool stuff. So I think anytime that a system has charisma like that behind it and health benefits, it's going to be amazing. I know there's a little bit of issue out there because they've combined it with cold and people can pass out and you can have different issues with that. But I think human accountability is very important. We got to do stuff with each other. And if something can hurt us, we need to know it, and we should be cautious with how we do things.
For sure, yeah. The Hoff was the first person to train me like 8 years ago. We were in Poland and spent a week with him. And I went there for the cold, and then the breath work just blew me, like pun intended, breath work just blew me away. Couldn't believe all these emotions were coming out.
Yeah. Do you still do it?
Very rarely, because I've noticed with my stress and anxiety levels, I need to downregulate more. So it's really good for me when I've got a migraine. It deals with the pressure in the brain and gets the migraine gone.
Very cool.
And I will do a little bit of what's called conscious connected breathing, which is like a longer, slower hyperventilation. But the Hoff, not so much, maybe a couple of times a year. Yeah, but I still enjoy it. Yeah,
very cool.
But I was doing it.
Yeah, there's all sorts of systems.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about what I do and what other people do is like we've got this like Swiss Army knife of breathing techniques, and there's so many, and everybody's body's so different. We can find different things, but yeah, I tend to downregulate quite a lot.
I'd be really interested how vasopressive breathing would do for your tongue tie. Do you know what that is?
That.
Vasopressive is where it's the vacuuming breathing, where you breathe everything out. And you sort of suck your intestines in and up towards the diaphragm it's not an actual breath, it's a false breath in. You breathe everything out, and you breathe everything out with me. And then before you breathe in, you're basically going to inhale without inhaling, and you're going to use that to vacuum your intestines in and back.
I've seen free divers do this, actually. They do these weird things with their stomachs. Okay.
Exactly. They're packing air, they're stretching their diaphragm. That I think would be an excellent inclusion to your world. I think a lot of the meditation and sort of spiritual community use that vasopressive pull to get some pressure through the pineal and pituitary glands as well. And it's just a really interesting structure and pulley system within the body that you can utilize. For you personally, it creates sort of the opposite pulley of what you're experiencing with this tension, because the only way to get those organs to pull in with those muscles is to get the neck really involved in the pull.
I'll have to play with that. Thank you.
Give it a try once more. So let's see. Get all the air out, every ounce of air out, all of it through the low belly, and then just pull that tissue straight through the back of the upper rib cage. Yeah, pull. It works really well in this position.
Okay.
Like this. Just for future.
I'll have a play with that. Right, wonderful. Yeah, and is that going to do something with the fascia as well then, that particular exercise, possibly?
My answer to so many things is I have no idea, to be honest with you. But I think that it is completely worth your personal exploration, because if you get good at that, it will only be because you have a significant ability at that stage to manipulate your fascia. You won't be good at that breath unless you have adapted to strong fascial pulls, which in that case, yes, it will manipulate your fascia significantly.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, but it's only based on how good you get at it. That's all this stuff.
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, just as we come towards the end here, you mentioned a couple of your podcasts, and I think on your website maybe, endogenous cannabinoid systems. I don't really know much about that. I know about cannabis. I've played with cannabis, but I don't know what then. Can you how does that link into your work? What is going on with it, and how does that link back to the training you do?
It doesn't. It's just a system that's very interesting to me, because I play with cannabis too. And I found that the correlations just have nothing to do with me, are very, very interesting with the endogenous cannabinoid system and the pleasure center and pain relief centers of the body that naturally occur. The only reason it's called the ECS is because it mimics cannabis, or cannabis mimics it. There's a couple that are very, very, very alike. They're almost molecularly identical. Anandamide, which is a naturally occurring human hormone, is almost identical to THC. They're so close molecularly. So it kind of gained the name of cannabis, even though that's really the only correlation, is the similarity there molecularly. In the system, or in the body, the endogenous cannabinoid system is a regulatory system. It is a stress response and adaptability neuroplasticity system in the body. It wants to get better at pain tolerance. It wants to get better at calming down. It wants to get better at resting and digesting. That's what that system is built in. But just like any system in the body, neurotransmitters or anything like that, it has to be fed accurately. It has to have the nutritional building blocks to make things like anandamide, so the system can flourish by having enough anandamide going through it that those sensors are sensed, that those things are triggered, and you get those good benefits. So my take on how the ECS works with things like foundation training or exercise in general is it's actually helping our exercise tolerance increase from like an adaptive standpoint. And it's also making our nervous system and our neurotransmitter system better at providing what we need for that exercise. And over time, those building blocks feed us in a lot of real ways. They feed our muscles, they feed our nerves. It's better B vitamin usage. It's better hormonal usage. It's better neurotransmitter usage. It's, the synaptic clefts that serotonin gets squirted out of, and then you need a little bit. There's something called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's what they give, SSRIs. That's what they give depressed people a lot of the time. What those things do is they make it so that when your brain squirts a little serotonin, it lingers just a little bit longer in that synaptic cleft before that thing goes empty and waits for the next squirt of serotonin to come in. The more building blocks you have of serotonin, the more building blocks you have of the endogenous cannabinoid system, the more those two can work together in concert to improve the lasting effects of serotonin, as well as the body's ability to enjoy and receive those benefits of serotonin. It's this positive feedback loop. And it seems, and please, everybody go study this, go learn, just type in endogenous cannabinoid system. You'll learn that every single vertebrate in the world has this system, and it is sort of the adaptive center of organisms. It's a very interesting system that you can spend a lot of time learning about.
I need to go down that rabbit hole for sure. That sounds really interesting. I will hear Joe Rogan talk about it a little bit. And then when you are partaking in marijuana, is that system absorbing that in a way? Is there a connection there with cannabis?
It stimulates it. It stimulates. It's not an absorption thing. It's a stimulation. It's a catalyst. It doesn't get so much used up in the system as it does stimulate the system. CBD stimulates the system most directly without any psychological effect really at all.
Okay, cool. Last question from me. Thoughts on dead hanging from a bar? I really enjoy it, but I don't know if it's like helping or hurting for decompression of spines and things like that.
I have a question because I'm looking at your neck and I think that your dead hang might be problematic. If your dead hang shortens the distance between your shoulders and your ears, it's no good for you. You need to actively lengthen the distance between the shoulders and ears.
I'm short.
Dead hang does not mean hang from your fingers. It means hang from your hands and pull your shoulders into your shoulder blades. So try that. Put your hands up above you and now pull your shoulder joints to your shoulder blades. Now feel the difference in your neck and chest as you breathe in that.
Yeah, it's normally like that.
This dead hang or passive hang will harm your neck. This will help your neck. And it's a subscapular serratus anterior contraction.
I genuinely mean this. I've been looking for somebody to follow to help get my body moving again. And I've had many screenings recently, met a few different people, and nothing really got me like excited, or I felt like they didn't really understand my body properly, and so I was like, it was just a waste of time. And so rather than even go with them, I just do nothing. I was just in a state of paralysis, because it's like, well, I don't waste my time doing the wrong thing, so I'll just do nothing. And so this podcast has been enlightening. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's really great. So where can people find you if they want to know more?
Just foundation training on Instagram. I have I'm Eric Goodman FT, if I have on Instagram as well, but really just foundation training is where most of that information is going to come. I would recommend foundationtraining.com for if you want to check out certifications or different programs, or if you want to find instructors near you. All of that is on foundationtraining.com. And then our app, which we've been working on for so many years, it's a very good app. The amount of education on there is significant. That is ftstreaming.com. And I would go right into fundamentals. And then if you have a regional pain, maybe feet and ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, neck, we have protocols by region on there as well. We have hobby stuff. We have, you say you like jujitsu. I don't know if you follow the Rutolo brothers, but we have combat workouts with the Rutolo brothers on there. We've been training them for a while. I've done a lot of work with Hicks and Gracie. So has Jesse Salas. Done a lot of work with a lot of other people, pretty significant in the field. As foundation training and jujitsu are very opposite patterns. They're both very powerful. Jiu-jitsu is very convergent. Foundation training is very expansive. They work extremely well together. But we have all sorts of stuff on FT Streaming. We have a lot of different walks of life and ages that use it. Members literally in their 80s and 90s, and then members that are in their teens.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to link everything down below. So whoever's watching or listening to this right now, the links are all down below, and I'm going to get stuck straight into this. So it's been a really, really powerful podcast. So thank you so much, Eric, for your time. Are there any last words you want to leave us with?
I'm really excited to see what this does for you. I want to stay in touch with you and try to help you with that tongue tie, because it's a significant thing. You and I are about the same age. I'm 43. I'm only a year older than you. And I would love to see what in the next, 6 months to a year of your life, you can make radical postural changes, and what those would also do neurologically and emotionally and all of that, just for your whole life, what they can do for you, and what your son will see as you do it.
Thank you. It's been great. Honestly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'd love to keep in touch. Wonderful. Well, Eric, thank you for your time. Everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Cheers all. Thanks, Eric.
Hey, thank you so much for sticking all the way through to the end of that podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I just have a quick question for you. Would you do us a favor and leave us a comment down below with one thing that you learned from the podcast, or one thing that you want to take away and implement into your own life? Because if you're like me, I watch loads of podcasts and I forget half the stuff. Even though it's all gold, there's so much I just forget. And so if you leave a little comment, it'll help you remember it, so you're more likely to embed it. But it will also help somebody else that then comes and watches the video or listens to the podcast and go, oh, what are these suggestions that people are making? So that would mean the world to us. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our Breathwork in a Blink. It's our 5-minute easy read newsletter. It comes out every single Friday. And in that, I'm sharing things like my favorite breathing exercise of the week, a study that I've been reading on breathing. We've got a wild card section. We've got all these different bits, and it's been designed so you can read it and scan through it in less than 5 minutes and pick out something you'd like to go deeper on. So the link is down below. It's completely free. You can unsubscribe anytime and join the nearly 10,000 other people that have subscribed to this wonderful email newsletter. And I asked myself a little while ago, what email would I want to receive that I wouldn't unsubscribe or ignore? And that's where Breathwork in a Blink came through. So link is down below, and I look forward to serving you each and every Friday. Now, at the end of these podcasts, as you probably know, we like to finish with a bit of a breathing exercise. So we're going to do a breathing exercise in a second. So just before we get started, let's just go ahead now and close our eyes if it's safe to do so. And just start to notice your breathing. And just start to soften the breath a little. And I want to say a huge thank you for giving me your time and attention. And I look forward to serving you later with another breathing exercise or YouTube video or podcast. But until then, here's a lovely free breathing exercise to see you through. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Welcome to Take a Deep Breath. Today's breathing exercise is 4-7-8 breathwork, an incredibly simple an effective breathing technique to help you relax during the day or fall fast asleep at night. This technique involves an inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, then a gentle hold for 7 seconds, and an exhale through the mouth or the nose for 8 seconds. I'm going to guide you with breath sounds and relaxing music, so sit back, relax, and let's begin. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. it. You're done. You're exactly where you need to be. This exercise is most powerful when practiced daily. So set a reminder in your phone or your calendar and come back to us, and we'll see you again. If you'd like to take your breathwork practice to the next level, click on some of the links below and see how you can come and work with us here at Take a Deep Breath for inner peace, more calm, deeper relaxation, better sleep, and a whole host of other benefits. The magic truly happens once we find a bespoke breath plan for you. We look forward to meeting you in a one-on-one or through email. Thanks so much.